of all, thank you everyone for joining us. We've got a pretty great turnout, and I'm excited to have the discussion today. I'm Demetrius Katsakopoulos. I'm the CEO at Selectus. We are a data platform company, and we've been working with CARFAX for the last couple of years, kind of initially on a consulting basis, and now with them using our platform, Magpie, to operate their data lake. Joining us today is Karen White, who really has driven the transformation that's taken place over the course of the last few years at CARFAX in the way that they do their analytics. She's the director of business intelligence there, and Karen, I'll let you introduce yourself and give some background.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone who's joined. I'm really kind of shocked at how big the number is down there. So let me just tell you that I have been working in the Washington area for 23 years doing BI for multiple different companies. There are a lot of people in this space that I know very well, and being at CARFAX has been a big deal for me because I think it's one of the best companies in the Washington area that they totally empower me to do my job and own my stack. And as long as I can, you know, support the business going forward and do it efficiently and cost effectively, then it's a great partnership. So just a little bit about my role there. Was that your next question, Dimitri? So, you know, I did meet Dimitri as part of some consulting early on because I started at CARFAX 4 years ago. And actually, I came in as a BI manager, and 9 months later, I got promoted to director. And one of the biggest challenges we had at that time was we were at end of life with a database, Actian. So we needed to take care of that right away, and I needed some good advice on cloud architecture and what to do. And I called Dimitri, he was referred to me, and you know, that's kind of how we started our relationship. But we have gone so far down the road now. and really learned a lot from each other. And I think that, you know, Selectus has been an awesome partner for us. And, you know, they have taken us to, you know, heights that we would never have dreamed of. So I'd like to say that the transformation at CARFAX was all my doing, but that's not true. It always takes a team, and I have an awesome team. So I do have there's 19 individual contributors on my team. I have 2 managers. I have a really kick-ass back-end infrastructure manager, Monique Wooten. I have to give her a big shout out because she's awesome. And, you know, then I have a front-end manager, Yogesh Manglani, who takes care of all the delivery lane, the agile work, pretty much anything that comes from our business users, he handles that front-end stuff. So I'm really, really lucky. And then I also have a data architect, which kind of helps us with the vision and the roadmap and that overarching, not to forget about product development and other places in the company that need data. So probably the biggest thing that you may know about CARFAX is we are a big data company, and our data set is very, very deep, not necessarily really broad, but very deep. So that was a big challenge for me because it was the biggest set of data I had ever worked with. So we, you know, my role there, I work directly for the CIO, and he expects me to create not only provide the vision, but actually create the roadmap to support CARFAX and everything they want to do each and every year. And every year we have a game plan, and we all, you know, agree on what that work's going to be, and then we support it throughout the year. So I think I'm really lucky because a lot of companies don't have that kind of very clear, you know, game plan and vision, and so it makes it a little bit easier.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, thanks for that background, Karen. And you know, obviously, it's been really exciting and rewarding for us to be part of the journey at CARFAX. And you know, I'm glad we've sort of continued to today and are sort of driving to the next set of things, really with the data lake. So, you know, where I'd like to start is if you could give a little bit of background on really what was the initial driver for that transformation. CARFAX had a data warehouse. They had an infrastructure for doing data integration. All of that was in place, and it was you know, serving the business.
Yep.
what drove the changes and what drove just the really substantial set of projects that you and the team have taken on over the last few years?
Yeah, so I think that it's really no different than anybody who walks into a new data warehouse. You look across it, you say, what's working, what's not working. For us, there were a lot of things that weren't working well, right? So we had a lot of data, we had tools, but we couldn't like stitch it all together and make it a well-oiled machine. And I think that was the biggest challenge. So what we got heard on from a stakeholder perspective was trust in the team and the BI brand, so to speak, and then data accuracy, and then delivering at the right time. So all of those things together. But like any other place, when you walk in, you make decisions. So the first thing we knew is that we needed a new database. So we decided to take Actian and go to Redshift because they were similar databases, and we went up in the cloud. That was number one because Actian was at end of life. So that had to be taken care of right away. But then once we were there, it didn't really change anything, nothing really got better. So we started looking at it and realized that, maybe it's the data model. And, you can look at the data model and say, can I fix it or do I have to rebuild it? And it was pretty clear to me that we had to rebuild it, that it wasn't built based on how the business operated. So we really went down the path. We spent a lot of time with the business, understanding their pain points, understanding what they needed. More importantly, understanding what questions they were trying to answer on a daily basis. So we took that upon ourselves to go ahead and start building out a new data model. But when you do that, then we started looking at the tools. They were a Cognos shop for 17 years. I had used MicroStrategy and OBIE and other tools in the past. So, you start looking at the tool saying, is it the tool? So if we build a new data model, do we need a new tool? Do we use the old tool? So do we have one tool that serves many, or should we have a toolbox? So what we did is we kind of we marched down the path of going from Cognos to MicroStrategy. But now I would tell you that we're closer to realizing that we probably need a toolbox. Because what you do when you're on this journey, and you're right, Dimitri, it was a big one. It was like a wave. We took it all on at the same time. So we were, building the new data model, installing and implementing a new tool in the cloud, training people up on that tool, building out, knowing that we had to support the power users and data scientists, and we needed a data lake, planning that out. And then when all that was said and done, building a new organization to support all of it, which we went to like a hub and spoke model because we wanted to push that self-serve so that we could, we weren't going to be bombarded with requests. We wanted the business to serve up the data, use the data, find the insights themselves. And so it was a big meal. But really, I would say that transformation itself was really around trust, accuracy, and getting that delivery time, down to nothing basically, so that they could do it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, it all sort of stems from that root of figuring out how to better serve the business and how to sort of establish that trust and build kind of the goodwill around it. As you kind of decided to go down that journey and, kind of start down that path and take on this, fairly large project, how did you go about defining the vision? How did you figure out what the endpoint is? I think you touched on some of this, but what were the sort of guideposts that you laid out so that you knew you were heading in the right direction?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that was really interesting to me. And, when you go in, you always, like, I'm a huge proponent of understanding the business model because I think it drives everything, right? And if you could build the best, platform, you could put the best analytics in place, but if it doesn't resonate with the business and they don't see how they operate their model in there, they're not going to use it and it will fail. So I knew that, and I kept meeting with them. We had JAD sessions, and what came out of those JAD sessions, the first one we had was with finance. And I said, if you were looking at your data, and I drew a circle and I said, finance is in the middle. What are all the attributes or data elements you would need to do your job, to answer the questions you have? And they started rattling off all the data elements. And then when we went to the next business department and talked to them, and we put, let's say, business development in the center, they rattled the very same data off. So it was quite surprising to me that I was like, oh, you know, they don't even realize it. They think they're using their own data. They're actually using the same data. So that made me feel good in some ways, because that's when I realized we're very deep. We're not so broad. We could actually do a common data model. So it was really an epiphany to see that. And then it made us feel better about, okay, we can do this. We could build that model the way they need it. We could push it over, put up a new tool, build that lake, you know, teach them how to be self-serve, use the hub and spoke, and get them up and running. And we really thought we could do it in less than 2 years. But the problem there is that I have a small team, and we had to do this and continue to do our day job. And our day job, we run our shop end to end. We load our own data, every single, you know, role on a BI team we have within those 19 people. So that was a little difficult, and we kept getting interrupted by bigger things. So, but I think that the biggest driver was trying to get data in the hands of the business, because they felt like if they only had access, I heard that so many times, if I only had access, then I could answer my questions and I could do a better job, or I could know what the next feature of a product should be, you know, all the things that we hear all the time. So, you know, even though we were in the cloud, we were making great strides, and it was a way better environment, it's interesting that it's the same questions we've been hearing for years in the BI space, right?
Right.
So it didn't really change a whole lot. People truly, you know, I think especially whether it's operational or customer based, they truly just want to get their questions answered when they have the question.
Right. Right.
So
No,
that was kind of like the driver.
yeah, and that starts to touch on really my next question, which was around stakeholder involvement. And you talked about this. It sounds like, you know, you did the sort of job of formal engagement, which is, you know, you're running JAD sessions, you're kind of engaging people that way. What were some of the other things that you did to make sure that you were maintaining alignment with the business and getting the buy-in that you needed?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is really getting stakeholders to understand that even though it's taking a long time and it's going to be a longer journey, you're going to do it right and do it well, and that there will be big changes. And I think that, you know, they were happy to wait. And, you know, and that's one thing about CARFAX. They're incredibly patient if they believe you're doing it for the right reasons, for the good of the company. And so they were incredibly patient. But what was interesting is that, you know, I don't think that they ever thought that it would change how we use data. Like, you know, you have to put a little more structure around it. You might, once you get the architecture cleaned up, and it's a well-oiled machine, you don't want to just introduce anything there. You have to start having data strategies, and you got to have data access strategies and data management strategies and all the things that come with it, governance and all these things. And we're not a company that follows, has lots of process and things like that. We're very agile, very lean. And so what you have to do is you have to look at that, listen to your stakeholders, figure out what they need, but make it fit to the culture of the company. So if your company is lean and it's moving fast all the time, and it's not a company that has a lot of documentation, then don't dwell on documentation. Figure out a way to be creative and effective without that. So I think that those kind of things were there, but there were countless conversations around stakeholders. And sometimes, Dimitri, it required us to actually show examples of what we were talking about. And I think that was the most powerful part of it. Like when I could say, no, you know, they'd say, well, Karen, this is how it works. This is what we do. And I'd show the data and say, actually, no, you don't do that. See here, you have all these exceptions and all these anomalies. And I think that's the most powerful. It's tedious and it takes a long time. but you have to do it, and it's well worth the end result. You know,
Yeah.
so it still is tough because, you know, they want to move on to the next thing, and we're still going, okay, all right, we're almost there. We're 75% in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, no, that's great. I think, you know, it sounds like, and this has always been kind of challenging, I think, in any program like this. There's a part of it that is really just doing the hard work, right? And driving through that and sort of, you know, kind of getting all the way there on the engagement side, while still trying to do your day job, while still trying to do the technical work. That's a difficult thing to do right. One question that we have right now from the folks that are on here is, and I think the answer to this is yes, but if you could elaborate a little bit, did you have to transition from an existing data model to a new model to support this? And sort of, and I think that, you know, the question behind that is, what was that like? How did you execute against that in a way that wasn't disruptive?
Sure. So we could tell pretty quickly that the old data model wasn't modeled based on how CARFAX did, you know, manage their business. It wasn't based on the flow of their business or their processes or the model that they used. So we kind of knew that that there were issues around that. What we did is we once we were up in the cloud, it made it really easy. We just added another schema. So one is called the data warehouse. The other is the enterprise data warehouse. The EDW is the new schema. And so we were able to build our new model in parallel and use the old data model as our kind of a testing ground to make sure that everything matched and that we weren't, you know, way off base, and we could test it with end users. And so it really was, that part was pretty, I mean, we're still doing it, and it has gone pretty seamlessly. So, you know, we were lucky because the cloud allows you to have that kind of space to do that. Now, right. The challenge was, it did mean that we had to load both because we had people using reporting and stuff off the old one.
Yep. No, that's great. So just, you know, kind of, you know, so you've set an overall vision, you've thought about the data model, you've kind of engaged with stakeholders and sort of decided, you know, broadly what the direction is. How did you then break that down into sort of manageable steps? What was the process for building the roadmap? How did you actually end up executing against that once you'd sort of figured it out?
Yeah, well, I mean, we kind of knew that, like, and you know this because I drew it a million times on my whiteboard. I'm the kind of person who will draw it out, and then I'll think of all the possible scenarios that could go wrong, or all the things that nobody else thinks of, and then, you know, I'll push those against it over and over and over until I can see that it's going to all work together. But one of the things, I mean, each part of that, whether it was build the new model, you know, implement new tools, you know, build out the lake for the power users, and then, you know, do the hub and spoke. There were certain, along the way, across all of those pieces, there were requirements. Like the data lake, that was huge for us because we had a very elite group of data, you know, gurus, scientists and analysts and, you know, statisticians who needed access to not only curated data, but some raw data like clickstream and very large sets of data that made it very difficult for them to do their job. So the lake was a no-brainer. And we actually, I think, Dimitri, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought my take on that is we stood that up in about 45 days.
That's about right. We did some kind of pilot work and laid the groundwork just to make sure that we could do things like handle the volume, but sort of go to, you know, live with people using it was probably about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, depending on
it was fast
measuring. Yeah.
It was very fast, and it has been one of the best things that we did. But, you know, one thing I can tell you about that, like, you know, even if you have a vision and you lay it out and you're looking at it and you're figuring out how it's going to work, there were lots of other things around that. Like, even if we did it all and then we had to go to the hub and spoke and reorganize my team, who was going to do the training? Who was going to go out and teach the end users? I knew I had to embed them in the business so that the business would be constantly reminded to use the new tools and to become self-serve. But even that we saw worked in some areas really well, in other areas not so well. So we kept going back and tweaking and adapting and changing. And I think that really is the key. So don't beat yourself up if it doesn't work. It's not going to work beautifully out of the gate. You have to, you do a little bit, you see how it's going, and you come back and you tweak it and you keep adjusting until you have what you want, until it's working in a way that is scalable, or that everybody's jumping on and they're saying, this is awesome, I have visibility for the first time, I can do it by myself. So we've had a lot of people, a lot of surprises in there too, actually.
Right.
so but I mean, but we stuck to it. I kept calling it the wave, because everything had to be done in a particular order in order for the whole thing to be that well-oiled machine that I kept talking about. And I knew that if we got there and everything was clean, then we could, scale it. We could do all the things. We could add new tools. We could do other things that they were very interested in.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who was kind of, who kind of had a front row seat throughout this process, I think there are a couple of things that kind of stand out. One was just the adaptability, right? Because the business kind of goes on. There's no moment at which you can sort of say, no, we're now working on this transformation. We're going to stop doing whatever we're doing. And those urgent things came up, and you had to sort of move with enough agility to be able to handle those things. The other thing that was, kind of amazing to me, and this is, editorializing a little bit, was just the sheer volume of large, complex projects that the team was able to process without really missing a beat. That was something that, from an execution perspective, seemed kind of incredible to me. I don't know if you want to just comment a little bit on just, there were, I think a lot of it was just like discipline and smart execution, but like, what were some of the things that really worked in terms of being able to execute against that much work over that short a period of time?
So that's a great segue into, I think that no matter where we went and we talked about it, people said to me, are you crazy to bite off all that? Are you crazy? Like, why would you take on all that? But my team is incredible. Like, for 19 people, one of the things that they did is every single person on my team plays multiple roles. And that's unusual, and if you pigeonhole your folks on a BI team, then you'll never get the full bounty of what they could offer for that team. And so every single person stepped up. They learned cloud. They used Udemy and all these other free training stuff. I sent them to training. I brought in Margie Ross and gave them all data modeling training. So we did everything we could to support them around training and learning. You Selectus provided training in a lot of spaces, but they were so excited about the vision. They could see, when I laid it out, they could see this is going to work. And plus, like I said, I have a kick-ass manager in Monique who was right there, and she's really the technical guru of our team. And she, owns that infrastructure. And she was like standing right there saying, we are going to do it. It will work. And she's incredibly good at execution. So I think that the team itself was so happy because we never changed our vision. We never stopped. We kept saying, we'll get there, we'll get there. And I think when people, as leaders, if you can get your team to truly believe in that vision, they will do anything to make it happen. And they saw the results, but they were seeing the results all along. Like they heard when the senior teams and the executives were saying, this is awesome, like we have visibility, or we're so happy, or when we could step up and take an interrupt and like give them data that they needed that they'd never seen before. So I think all of that kind of culminates into a really, that's what you want. That's why we do this stuff. We love it. We love connecting the dots.
Yeah, it's really interesting because people talk about kind of like quick wins and the incremental progress as being really important to sort of keeping the business on board. I think they tend to kind of underestimate how important it is to the team to see those wins. People want people to, respond positively to their work. I think the other thing is the thing that I saw with the team was just their sort of excitement around, kind of leveling up themselves, and being provided the opportunity to do that. I think was neat. And they all stepped up. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah, and they learned a lot. I mean, their skill sets now are, you couldn't find people like that in the marketplace because they all have so many skills under one hat. As a matter of fact, I really don't want to send them to any conferences because I was so afraid they'll be picked off.
Yeah.
They're that good.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, I wanted to kind of dig into the data lake. That's obviously, kind of near and dear to my heart. Talk a little bit about what drove the decision to implement the data lake. How, what was the sort of trigger for that? How did you know that it would work well alongside the warehouse? And how did you sort of decide to start?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, we had a requirement for these power users, and we had never been able to support them in the past. Like no matter what we tried, it wasn't good enough. Either we didn't have a space where they could, so there were certain requirements they had. They had to be able to run their algorithms. They had to be able to blend data that was both, curated and raw. They wanted to see very large sets of data like clickstream. There were data sets that grow exponentially, and we didn't want them to persist that data across other places at CARFAX. We wanted to keep it in one place. So that's when we began talking to you about, we need this lake. We knew we needed a lake, but you hear so much about people who try to put up a data lake and they fail miserably because it becomes a dumping ground for anything and everything. We didn't want that because these people that I'm talking about, the power users, they work in the business. They are business people. They are data savvy, but their jobs are to support things like marketing or finance or things like that for the company. Product's the big one. So, we had to have a space where we could let them do all these things, visualize the data, do everything that they needed to do, but not interrupt or bring down like the data warehouse, or if they, ran a bad query or whatever. So we started talking to you about that lake. One of the things I think was most important is you taught us to lightly structure it, to make it easier for them to find where the data was, that they wanted was. So, we didn't have time to sit down and build huge data dictionaries and things like that. We do have one built, but it's more for the tool side, right? Around the BI tools. But so you taught us how to load that data, how to build that light structure so that people could actually navigate it. And then one of the things we realized is some of those folks, if they weren't using Python or other languages, they needed SQL. And so we looked at multiple platform tools to put on top of that lake, and we ran them against your Magpie tool. And it's just so funny to me because you talked to me about Magpie so many times and I was like poo-pooing you. Like, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, it felt good.
But then when we sat down and actually looked at it after we had seen other tools, I was like, holy crap, this does everything we need. So it was perfect. It was the perfect tool for us, and it has been hugely successful. But I'll tell you that the thing is that we also had to make a commitment that we needed somebody on my team, and everybody on my team uses it, but we needed somebody who could kind of take point and help those end users learn how to use it, how to blend that data. And probably the biggest thing that blew everybody's mind in the business around Magpie was the fact that it could, when you ran your query, it would visualize the data right then and there. So it made it very quick to know, am I in the right place? Am I looking at the right data? Or am I totally wrong? And I think that was like the biggest selling point, because we do a lot of, I said we run really fast and we're very lean, but our business users, sometimes they will put a new product out. They want to see immediately, is it doing okay? Like whether it's on Facebook or wherever, right? How are we doing right now? And the minute the data starts flowing, and the lake allows us to do that. That's huge in our business. So I think that that was a big game changer for us. And we started where we used to get like all these tickets of broken reports for months. All of a sudden we started getting all this feedback on Slack about how awesome the lake was. And now product devs use it, power users use it. People are using it to answer their questions. They can blend it. We've put a lot more stuff in there. I think we're maybe, we went live last September. We're probably, I don't know, you probably know better than I, but I think around 6 terabytes of data that we've been putting in, but we're pumping a lot more in the next few months. So, but it has taken off. I think we have now 30 or 40 business users up and running on it.
That's great.
Which is huge.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think one of the things that's been really powerful and sort of interesting to see, and not something that we fully anticipated in terms of the way that people use the tool there, is the extent to which it's become a basis for collaboration between your team and the business.
Yes,
that's been really exciting.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is that it has become now people, it's not just stakeholders who trust that our data is accurate. It's actual developers who are building products who are saying, they're looking at BI differently now. They used to look at BI as just, oh, they're just reporting, don't worry about them. But now they're coming to us saying, hey, how can I make create a service off of that? And how can I do this? And how can I do that? It really has, I think that the opportunities are endless. And, I just can't say enough about you guys and how great you were to work with, but in case anybody's on there that's thinking about this, I will tell you that one of the biggest things that I love about Selectus is you guys come in, you look at the landscape, you showed us our options. You never tried to sell us in one direction or the other. You just said, here's the pros and cons of each of these. And you let me decide what was going to work for us. And I think that's a huge, it's just unheard of in today's world. People always want to sell you, I want you to take my tool, but you were really good about showing us the value that we could gain from it. So I think that was huge.
Yeah, that's something that we, first of all, thank you for that. I think it's been, like I said, it's been really a privilege for us to kind of work with you and the team there throughout this entire process. And it's incredibly satisfying to see the level of success that you've been able to achieve. It's really great for us. I think from our perspective, it really is about, how do we, our goal is, how do we create opportunities for the customers to succeed? And, what is the right thing to do in any context to kind of drive that? And we've sort of built the tool around that as well. And that's why we think it's, it was a great fit for CARFAX, and we think it's a great fit for other folks as well. So again, glad that we're driving that level of success, and a lot of it is due to the team there and the way that you guys have kind of taken it on. As you've kind of gone through this journey, what are some of the big lessons learned that you've had? What are some of the things that were kind of unexpected? What were the surprises?
Well, I think the number one surprise is that no matter how many times you put it on paper or write it on a whiteboard of how quickly you can get it done, it's never that quick. It always stretches out because you don't know what you're going to be interrupted with, right? But I wouldn't let that deter you. Stick to your plan. Know that you're going to stay on track or get back on track, even if you have to stop and do something. And we did stop and do some really big projects in between. But the biggest thing I think that was a surprise to a lot of folks is that when we got to the point where we were trying to do the, hub and spoke or get people to use the lake, it was very interesting that people who we thought had great skills, we were seeing really needed a lot more help. So you have to be prepared for that, even though from a distance, it may look or appear that they have all the skills they need. So one of the things that that has taught me is that maybe we should use like the old Spotify model, which is if you're going to have a lot of data analysts or statisticians or whatever you want to call them in your company or in your space, you might want to have your BI team be the people who help recruit those folks, hire those folks, and then let them spend a couple of weeks in your shop teaching them the tools, the data model, the data lake, and how to use it, and then ship them off to their business areas so that they can learn the business model and the process and all that. Because I think that that's way more effective than having them go off and have the business think that they have these top-notch skills, and then you're kind of stuck in this quandary of saying, maybe not so much. They should be able to do this by themselves, but they're not able to. So that was a big one that really stands out to me, because we, you know, it's something that we keep, you know, trying to tackle and find different ways. The other thing is be creative, right? What we realized is just because you read a book and it says to do it a particular way, if it doesn't fit with your culture, you will never get that, you know, embedded there. You'll never be able to even stand up what you want. So be creative and remember that, you know, if you understand what your company does and you understand their culture, those are the two biggest tips I can give you, because no matter where I've worked, it's always been that way. You know, I mean, you know, the other thing is make sure your vendors are trustworthy, that they're people that you know or you've worked with. Get references, because those are really important. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't think because, you know, for a lot of us, going to the cloud is brand new, right? I mean, we don't know what we don't know, and it is a different world. But, you know, you can learn. Get someone who, if you're not the most technical person on the team, that's okay. Get somebody who is, that you can trust to give you guidance there. Those are probably all the things that we really learned lessons around, were those kind of things. And, you know, of course, you always have unexpected things within the data itself, right? But it's communicate, 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 you know, and then don't be afraid to take training or ask a vendor to help you with training, because you guys did a lot of that for my team. You even did a lot of on Slack with us about helping us answer questions once we went live on the lake. That's huge. And, you know, that's stuff that, you know, you guys did because you wanted our success to be, you know, you wanted us to be successful. So, you know, I think sometimes you feel like if you have those kind of issues that you should have thought of them, or, you know, it should be perfect. It's never perfect, you know?
Right.
Just be creative around how you're going to tackle it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think the resilience and sort of the ability to adjust is so incredibly important. You know, kind of last question, then we have a couple of audience questions that I also want to get to. We're supposed to end at 2:45, but we might go a couple of minutes long.
That's okay.
Stick around. So last question is just what is the, you know, and I think we've talked about a little bit of this, but, you know, what's the impact been? You know, the data lake's in place, the new architecture is in place. You know, some things are still taking shape, but like, how have things changed, you know, kind of more broadly? What's the business impact? In what ways has this, you know, created ripples in the rest of the organization?
Well, I can tell you that when I started there, what I heard from our senior executive team was, yeah, BI, you poor thing. We don't trust that. It will never be good. And I just heard from the marketing VP the other day, he said, all roads lead to BI. And I thought that was a very telling thing, because what he's saying is every single thing, project, product, everything he's touching, they keep saying, we got to talk to BI. We got to talk to BI. So I think the biggest impact has been the trust that they have now, that we are data experts and that we do understand, and we will try to help them. Now, trust me, like I said, we're a big team at CARFAX. and we got some really smart people who've been doing this for a very long time. But we are really good at coming together and using those skills across everything and leveraging them where we have to. And that's critical. So if you're encapsulated in this little BI team, you need to break out and see what everybody else is doing, because somebody over there that wears a different hat might be able to solve your pain points very quickly. That was a big lesson. But the impact from, every year, Dimitri, I give my team a theme. The first year it was build credibility. And the second year I said, we've got so much credibility and now we got to do the work. Be careful what you wish for, because now they're coming. And so it was all about, trying to get through it. But, now it's really about becoming that well-oiled machine. I feel like we're almost there 100%, but I'm already looking at the next 3 to 5 years and how we're going to build that out. And I can see now how, we can support all from a high level, all things like product, customer data, everything all across CARFAX. And we just have to, raise it up and build it. It's going to be another big add-on. I think it's going to be huge. I'm excited about what's coming.
That's great. That's great to hear. So just a couple more questions from folks. The first one, which I think is really interesting, is is about the semantics. Was there already agreement in the business around, for example, what does units sold mean, or were the business definitions and the business rules around the data clear already, or was that something that you and the team had to sort of facilitate through?
No, it really wasn't, and I get where they're coming from. Sometimes that's part of the hardest, thing, is trying to get consensus on what something means. We didn't have, even today, we don't have that, but we took a different take on that. So we use, and Dimitri, you know this, we use the same data, but we put a lot of different rules towards it. So it's okay if one product is using it in one way and another product's using it in another, because our entire business is built on, one type of data, really, if you look at it in its simplest form. So how can we exploit that to do multiple things, right? So I wouldn't get so hung up on making sure that everything means the same. I think what you have to do is this is where you have to be really clear with stakeholders about, it's okay if you want to have your like cost per something, with these rules. You just have to be aware that over here, they're reporting it with this rule. And if you come together, like when it comes to financials or revenue, that's probably the one place that we are 100% in agreement. But when it comes to products and stuff, marketing, you can swing it any way you want.
Right. Right. And so it sounds like, it's just a matter of like figuring out where that kind of like semantic agreement is really important, right, versus where there's room for some flexibility, because you want to be, responsive to the immediate need.
That's right. And the other thing is that, and they didn't ask this question, but I probably would have if I were listening, in a lot of companies, the BI team has to get buy-in from a senior executive in order to do a big transformation like this, because it's not cheap, right? You got to buy things and but at CARFAX, that's what I'm telling you. The beauty of it is they basically looked at me and said, okay, if you tell us that's what's going to work, we're going to believe you, but you better get it done and it better work. So I kind of knew that. I knew that if I couldn't prove that what I was saying was right, if we couldn't show that kind of impact, I'd have been out looking for a job. So they're really good about, that's what I meant when I said they're good at being patient to see what you can do, what you can bring to the table. Right. And it's all about value. So you have to show value, even in the smaller things that you're doing. And as long as you're always thinking like that, you'll be okay.
Yep, that's great. And then finally, just how long has the new architecture been in place? I know with the data lake, we've been up and running probably for about 8 months now. But
Mhm.
you know, I know that different things are at different phases. But how
Yeah.
long, you know, is it, you know, have you kind of been up and running long enough to know, hey, this is working well versus not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are just getting ready this August to re-sign another 3-year contract with Redshift on AWS. So we have been on Redshift for 3 years, and we're getting ready to sign again. We've had 0 problems with AWS, just as an aside, because a lot of people ask me that question. 0 issues, none at all, actually. So that piece was the first piece. The tool, we've been on MicroStrategy. We have a great partner with, we bought our MicroStrategy tool through DataStrong, which is another big partner out there that does a lot of consulting on MicroStrategy. And we've been up and running on them for going into our 2nd year. We're probably 1.5 years in, I guess.
Yep.
And that's been a little slower, but mostly because it was waiting for that new data model. So we had to wait till the data model had enough data in it to say we were more than 50% before we could start showing value. Because if we had done it too soon, it wouldn't have made sense, and we wouldn't have been able to show that value. So each phase did have a purpose, and you know, you're right. And then the data lake came next, and now we're finishing up the kind of, not really the low-hanging fruit, but it's kind of the low-hanging fruit around other departments, business groups that probably weren't as significant in the beginning. We did the bigger ones first.
Okay, well, good. Good. That's really it for questions. First of all, thank you so much, Karen, for doing this. It's really appreciated, and you know, obviously to the folks that joined us today, thank you. Hopefully, this has been valuable. I think that, you know, CARFAX's journey around BI transformation has been really exciting to sort of witness, and I'm just really glad that we've been a part of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for everybody who joined. So, you know, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And obviously, feel free to reach out. If you have any more questions, you can reach out to us, and we'll try to get them answered. And with that, we'll sign off. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.